scary stranger on a train. Tonight was supposed to be like any other mundane weekday evening. I'd finished my late shift at work, exhausted and ready to disconnect, as I trudged my way to the station. The train was the usual mix of tired faces, a sea of blank expressions and glowing screens, each person lost in their own bubble. I found a seat next to an older woman who seemed harmless enough, and I settled in for the ride home. This particular route has always been the same, 2 stops before mine, a dead zone for phone service, just a stretch of track that feels cut off from the rest of the world. The kind of place where anything could happen and no one would even know. I leaned back, letting the soft hum of the train lull me into a daze. I wasn't paying attention to much of anything. And that's when he appeared. I didn't notice him at first, just a tall figure moving down the aisle, his steps slow, calculated. He wasn't like the others, who glanced around nervously or clung to their phones as if they were lifelines. No, he walked with purpose, head slightly tilted, scanning each row. I didn't think much of it until he stopped, dead center in the aisle, right in my line of sight. He turned, pivoting on his heel with a strange precision, like someone performing a ritual, and locked eyes with me. His smile was the first thing I noticed. It wasn't a normal smile, it was too wide, like his mouth had been stretched too far, lips pulled back to reveal too much gum and teeth. It was unsettling, like the smile of someone who had forgotten how to be human. And his eyes, they didn't blink. They were dark, empty, and they were fixed entirely on me. "There you are," he said, his voice low and eerie, almost as if he were relieved to finally see me. "I've searched this train every night for you, my angel." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I froze, gripping the edge of my seat. There was something about the way he said it that made my skin crawl. His tone was soft, almost affectionate, but it was laced with something dark, something predatory. He kept staring, his eyes boring into mine, and I couldn't look away. It was as if he'd been waiting for this exact moment. He knew me. He knew everything about me. My mind raced, trying to place his face, but I couldn't remember ever seeing him before. He wasn't familiar, he was a stranger, and yet, he looked at me like we had history. I tried to convince myself that it was just some random creep trying to get a reaction, but then he spoke again, and the chill that ran through me was like nothing I'd ever felt before. "Are you getting off at XXX?" he asked, and my blood went cold because that was my stop. No one knew that, no one should know that. I never spoke to anyone on my commute, never made small talk with strangers. But he knew. And then catching the XXX bus home, he added, smiling even wider. His voice was syrupy, dripping with a sick kind of satisfaction, like he was savoring every second of my shock. I couldn't move. My body felt disconnected from my brain, trapped in that awful moment. The way he spoke, the things he knew, it was like he'd been watching me, following me, studying every part of my routine. I tried to convince myself it was some weird coincidence, but deep down, I knew better. He wasn't guessing. He had been there, somewhere in the background, observing me while I was completely unaware. The lady beside me must have sensed my fear. She glanced at the man, then at me, her face tightening with concern. She gently touched my arm, snapping me out of my frozen state. The train began to slow as it approached the station, and I knew I had to get away from him. As soon as the doors opened, I bolted out of my seat, practically shoving past people to get to the platform. I didn't look back. I couldn't. My only thought was to put as much distance between myself and that man as possible. I sprinted toward the bus stop, my legs aching, lungs burning, but I didn't stop until I was safely inside the crowded bus, my back pressed against the cool window. I kept looking out, scanning the darkness, half expecting to see his face staring back at me from the shadows. But he was nowhere in sight. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching, maybe just out of view, maybe waiting for the next chance to find me. I can't get his face out of my head. It's burned into my mind, the sickening smile, the way his eyes never wavered. It was like he was trying to memorize every detail of me, like he wanted to make sure I wouldn't slip away again. The unsettling part isn't just that he found me tonight. It's the terrifying realization that he's been looking for me for a while, blending into the background of my routine like a shadow I never noticed. The more I think about it, the more my mind unravels. Last Wednesday, I remember seeing him. He was on the same train, standing at the end of the car, smiling at everyone in that unnerving way. I didn't think much of it then. I just did that awkward, polite smile you give strangers. But now it's clear, that wasn't the first time he saw me, it was the first time I noticed him. And what scares me the most is wondering how many times he watched me when I wasn't paying attention. How long has he been hiding in plain sight, studying my every move? I've reported it to the police, informed my workplace, and I'm planning to change my routine as soon as possible. But the truth is, I don't feel safe anymore. I feel exposed, vulnerable. He's out there, somewhere, and he knows too much. I can't stop replaying his words, the way he said them, like he was savoring the moment he'd finally caught up to me. I don't know what he wants, but I can't shake the feeling that this is far from over. Stay safe out there, everyone. Watch your back, even when you think you're alone. And never underestimate the strangers who seem to know you just a little too well. Thank you all for your support and advice. XX